Thank you.
French toast. This is a hotel in Montenegro. There is a mountain. There's no bus.
79. Until the 1979, people dominantly lived within the city walls. It was always a small settlement, few thousand people lived here. But what happened in 1979? Earthquake. Very devastating earthquake. The funny things are happening in Albania. People
These are
it's a big issue over there. Like, but how can we bring Albanians? Like all we can do is, no matter which country ruled the Budva, people of Budva had a certain level of autonomy, which means, let's say, for example, in the 13th, 14th century, medieval Serbia governed Budva. But local people paid certain tax to the Serbian.
the old town of Budva.
In the middle of 19th century, and it was built by Austrians. This is one of the buildings that did not collapse in earthquake in 1979. Excellent construction. Let's say you see the garden here where the chairs. Until the 1979, there was a house here.
There's another church here. There's an ongoing mass.
Sjedjetenji očna ja, I slovo Božje vtja se nisja, I plod visne izrečen.
And that's the sea over there, Adriatic Sea. The sea, Adriatic Sea, and the coastline over there. This is the coastline of Montenegro and the old town. The marina here in Montenegro. The yacht.
Okay, so we just arrived at Kotor Old Town. Here on the right. Here on the right, we're gonna meet the guide. We're gonna walk here, and it's going to be a walking city tour. Here we're gonna have time first. We're gonna make tour, and then after tour we're gonna have time for lunch and souvenir store and.
Oh, hello.
Be careful, be careful, be careful.
A duck. Ganda. Wow. There's the marina over there. Castle.
Romans arrived Byzantines, after Byzantine Serbian kingdom for a while, and after that Venetian Republic from 14th century to 18th century. And everything what we can now see was mostly built on Venetian Republic. After Venetians arrived Frenchmen for a while, Austrian Empire in First World War, and then in Second World War Germans. And after that we became part of Yugoslavia. And after Yugoslavia in 2006, we gained our independence together with Montenegro. Which translated means what ours we won't give, but what from someone else we won't take. Yeah, they were communists as well. Yeah. Above there is the Yugoslavian crest, it's still there. And above Yugoslavian crest there are three flags. They're tangled right now. But the first one is UNESCO flag. Because Kotor was also influenced by two big earthquakes. The first one was in 17th century, and the last one was in 1979. And after that, we became part of UNESCO. That's why UNESCO flag. The middle one is Montenegro flag, and the third one you cannot see because it's completely tangled. Is a Kotor flag. So now let's square, or also called square of arms. Venetians would always build these kind of squares for storing all the armory and the prisoners or defense, and everything was stored in the arsenal building on the right side, right across the square. Right next to the building is the Napoleon Theater, the yellow building. Right? Because Venetians would elect one nobleman from noble house to serve until they were famous seafarers, merchants, etc. But the reason why I'm showing you this palace because it's the most typical one. Why it's most typical one? For you, it probably looks like a normal house, right?
Are the palace? Byzantine palace.
A baking flour for the bakeries and for the bread and everything. Because this square was used by the bakers. We had many bakeries in this square, but unfortunately now only one bakery right there, and even that bakery is closed right now because of winter. So the reason why we are stopping on this square are these two palaces, Prima Palace and Budva Palace right behind you. So these two palaces were owned by two richest families in Kotor, but from two different periods of Kotor. So,
Serbian.
and it was first owned by a family Budva. This is a Catholic cathedral, and it's dedicated to our sacred patron, Saint Tribune. Saint Tribune was a young martyr who lived in 3rd century in Nicaea, near Constantinople. Was beheaded by Roman emperor because he didn't want to renounce his Christianity. Later on, in 8th century, his remains were brought to Kotor. But Kotor wasn't supposed to be his final god, that we should keep his remains here and proclaim him as our sacred patron. And that's why, in the 9th century, they built a small church right here on the grounds of this cathedral. Grigurina. Palace Grigurina was built by family Grigurina in 18th century when they arrived from Croatia. But when the last owner died, he left this palace to Kotor. But for some time, in First World War and Second World War, it was a headquarters for Austrian and the tourists. Now they're just fat, lazy, and influencers of Kotor. Yeah.
They say the thing on the flag.
The Carapana fountain, and Carapana fountain was built in 18th century.